Thanks again, Elena, for hopping on to another episode of Untapped Stories. I'm so excited to talk to you. I know we were chatting a bit before show. We found your profile online, just with the awesome content, awesome clips you've shared about basketball training and everything you've been doing. But maybe for the audience, so we're a marketplace connecting athletes and coaches for in-person lessons. We have a lot of parents and young athletes that view these videos. So maybe for them, if you could just set the stage on your background, who you are, where you grew up, maybe how basketball, but also sports in general, if it was more than basketball, and how those early days of you being an athlete shaped who you became, today as a coach and a developer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for inviting me. This is super exciting. I always enjoy, I'm not a big fan of talking about myself, but I think that giving exposure to, former athletes into coaching or any other, I guess whatever you love to do, I think is great. So in this case, it's sports.
Yep.
So obviously, my name is Elena De Alfredo in Spanish. I'm from Madrid, Spain. So I moved to the U.S. at age of 18, and I'm now 32. So I've been here for quite some time. And I was lucky enough to fall in love with basketball from an early age. I was a tennis player as well. Back in my hometown in Spain, it's very common to play multiple sports as well. And one of them for me was tennis, and I was actually very good at tennis. Sometimes I would like to think that I was actually better at tennis than basketball, but I think that basketball gave me kind of like the camaraderie, and then you had your teammates, and it was more like a team sport, and I was kind of looking for that. So yeah, my background is basically basketball. I wanted to play because my sister started playing. I have an older sister that is 3 years older than myself.
Okay.
And my parents would bring me to the games. I fell in love with basketball. I would like to say almost by the time that I was out of my mom's womb. So so yeah, and to be honest, I've kind of had always that personality where if I like something, I pursue it until I cannot do it anymore. So that's basically what I did with basketball. Played professional basketball back in my hometown. I'm from Madrid, Spain. I played for Estudiantes from early age to when I was 18. I played 6 years of professional basketball. Then I moved to the States. I earned a scholarship for the University of Toledo in Ohio, Division I, and then I transferred to the University of Tampa, where I'm at today. I always wanted to play until I was 40 years old, but obviously things happen, injuries happen. I tore my Achilles in 2020, right before COVID.
Okay.
And then I had to make a difficult decision because if I would leave the country, then I would not get my visa. So I stayed, and then I had to reinvent myself. I always say this to everybody: don't be afraid of reinventing yourself. Sometimes things happen that you have no control over.
Yep.
And that's basically what happened to me. I love basketball. I've always had a intense mind about it. I was always that kind of player that asked a lot of questions. I played point guard, so I was very in tune with why the strategy, always in my coach's offices. So that kind of mindset kind of triggered in my head when that happened to me and I had to get surgery.
Okay.
And then I started as a graduate assistant here at Tampa from 2017 to 2019, kind of diving and seeing if I kind of liked it. And that's when I still had the player mindset in my head. I wanted to play. And then in one of the workouts is when I tore my Achilles, and then COVID hit. And then, I stayed in the US and I was like, I'm done with basketball. My dreams had shattered. I wanted to play, and then now I tore my Achilles. I don't know what's going to happen. All the borders are closed. Teams are not playing. So long story short, after those two years, those two COVID years, I got in contact with a former player at UT, and they opened this facility for player development. And he was like, hey, why don't you try it? I was in my crutches. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, but let me just try, right? And then I started to fall in love with it again. I was like, hey, maybe there's a place for me to coach, and maybe that's my calling, because I've always loved to bring players with me. My team is with me. I've always loved to study the game further than just from a player mindset, and more like the strategy or why do we do certain things.
Yep.
And then the head coach at Tampa called me right around that time when COVID was ending, and he was like, hey, why don't you come now as a full-time employee for us and, come with us and help us and and as an assistant coach, right? And I was like, why not? But the only condition or the only thing I have within me is if you allow me to start a player development program for the team, because that's kind of how I fell in love back with basketball beyond from when I was a player.
Yep.
So, and since then there's history. Now I've been at Tampa. This will be my total will be my 7th year at the University of Tampa.
Wow.
2 as a graduate assistant, 5 as an assistant coach. And I get to do player development. I get to do strategy for games, offense, defense, and get to train and coach the players. I always like to stay away from training. Okay. And mentoring and coaching is kind of the way I want to be perceived at, because it's beyond basketball. I've always thought that everything is beyond the sport. Even if you're a musician, even if you're an artist, everything is beyond the art that you're doing. It's more who you are as a person. And I think that's something that I can bring the players in many ways, because I've been through every kind of, I guess, moment, from my winning European championships with the national team to being injured and not knowing what to do. I've been in the middle of the pack in a team versus being the best on the team. Like I've been in every realm of any situation. So I think that's the beauty of a coach now that had been a player for a long time. So that's 100%. Kind of in a very, very short, I guess, sense how I started kind of my journey in the coaching world, in here at Tampa.
One cultural question I'd love to ask. So I think today for young athletes, AAU is just a big part of basketball growing up in the U.S. You can't really avoid it. A lot of kids play travel, and you have to play AAU, I think, essentially, to get to where you want to be in college. It's not like that. It's more club-based in Spain. Just curious to get your thoughts on the different. I know you didn't play AAU here, but I'm sure recruiting and you've seen kids come through. What do you think the differences are, and are there, I guess, what are the pros and cons to each? Like, did you like the club scene in Spain, or think you would have preferred having done the more traditional U.S. AAU route?
I like the club, and the reason why is not necessarily because I don't like AAU. I think that in Spanish we have a saying, todo maestrillo tiene su librillo. That means every master has their ways. So I'm never going to say, something is better than the other, but I think that there's a very important aspect that we're losing here, and is you're teaching young players to play with parameters that you're not going to find when they want to get to college or play in the professional world.
Yep.
And that is rules that are not the same. When you play club basketball back in Spain, you play with a shot clock, which this happens in high school too. And I think this is going to change as well now, and I'm happy about that, because that's one of the things that we see that the players struggle the most, is the time constraint within decision-making and reacting to things that are happening. I think that we're missing a big part of collegiate basketball, and if you want to go in the pros, which is understanding the game.
Yep.
I think it's become a more of a one-on-one situation where you're trying, which I understand, you're trying to showcase your talent so the viewers or the coaches that are looking at you see what you're capable of as part of, like, maybe scoring a basket or your skills with the ball. But I think we're missing the big point. And I think that from an early age, as early as 14 years old, I was exposed to understanding spacing, timing, playbooks, seeing how I can utilize my skill set within a parameter or rules, but I still had the chance to make my reads within the ruling or the playbook that the coach was having at the time, right? Because I had multiple coaches. I think having multiple coaches that have coached me has helped me a lot. And sometimes we have a misconception of like, oh, I just want to be with one coach all the time. Well, yes and no. You have to be exposed to many other things. So it's a trial and error, right? I think that just like you vibe with a coach, we vibe with players. Just what is the same way. So I think that there's a lack of preparation from the coach's standpoint, and there's a lack of understanding from the family standpoint of what your player or your kid in that case needs to become a better all-around player. So us as coaches in obviously in college, or even if you want to make it to the pros, we're looking at. There's a lot of things that we're looking at, and not just how you dribble the ball.
Yep.
So that is often missed in many ways because of the lack of education for families and the actual players, right? I think that's a big thing, the lack of education in what we're looking for, or what should you be looking for when you're looking for coaches that are training you outside of your AAU teams, the coaches that are coaching you within your high school or AAU. Many times we have winning as the end product, and we miss the development that the kids need to have in order to get where they need to get. Sometimes you're a late bloomer, sometimes you're an early bloomer, but we're missing that piece. I think that's what I get to see every time I go to recruit in AAU. We have a saying, and I don't want anybody to get offended by it. It's a joke, but it's kind of true in many ways. We say AA me.
I like that.
You see what I'm saying? Because it's the lack of education and the lack of exposure. So that's why there's no understanding of what really we're looking for as coaches. And I use my platform in many ways to continue posting, to educate people. Hey, not necessarily we're looking at how much you score or how many shots you take. We're looking at a bunch of other things, because I could coach you through a lot of those things and mentor you and get you better to where you need to get at some point within your career, right? So I think that's what, I don't think there's a wrong concept. I think it's maybe the wrong way to go about it.
I like that. And that's a funny point too. Remember, I played AAU in high school with a couple of guys that wound up going to Division I. The one kid played at Villanova, but I remember the Villanova coach specifically saying he had a really bad game. A teammate told me this. He maybe scored like 5 points, which would have been terrible for him. But the way he conducted himself in every shot, looked confident. He still kept his chest up, played good defense, and even though he was our best player, had a bad game, the Nova coach loved that, because he was like, I know this kid is going to drop 25 the next game, and he didn't cry or complain this time. So that's and then he wound up having a great career. So I think that holds true, and a lot of families do forget that. But I guess going back to the training and coaching question. So how do you, and it's a tough one, but if AAU is not going to give it to you, you don't have clubs in the U.S. like you would that could, train and educate kids like that. How do you foster that as a family with young athletes now? Like, do you find, and obviously, we're a private coaching marketplace. I'm not trying to point you in that direction, but like, what can you do as a young athlete to build yourself up in the right way to be able to play high level, high school, and then college if you want?
I've always go back to that. That's why I am a firm believer that player development, that's why I call it player development, in many ways is very important. I was very lucky back home that I had very good coaches and mentors all throughout my career, right? So that's what I'm saying. There's not really a right or wrong in regards to the club scene versus the AAU scene. It's how we go about it, right? So if in this case, the US is marketed that way, that's how things work, and that's fine, right? How can we better it, right? I think adding the shot clock is very important, right? And adding that coaching outside of that AU or high school is very important, because you get exposed to maybe group trainings that you bring players from other places, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you get exposed to other cultures in how we teach basketball, because the way I teach basketball is very different, I'm sure, than any others, and vice versa, right? So I think being exposed to certain things, and me even being here in the US, has exposed me to many other things that I didn't come across when I was younger, and it's really good. And I can make it my own now, and I can mix both, you know what I'm saying? So I think 100%. That, to me, there's never a right or wrong, it's how we do it. Is how we go about it. So to your point, I think having a development coach that helps you, with maybe the things that the AU is lacking or your high school is lacking. I'm not sure. It depends on the situation, right? Maybe your system is, at AU is, more 5-out and go, right? Which is fine. It's really good. You got to know how to play in that system.
Yeah.
Maybe this other coach can help you with your readings and how you move without the ball, understanding maybe how to play with a ball screen or how to make reads when you're off ball screening, right? And maybe your team is more of a dribble drive type of concept. So it's like finding and tuning what can I add to your game within your system, and also what can I add to your game that is not within your system to make you the most versatile player that you can be, to understand the game, not to do things perfect, is to start to understand and feel how you're doing certain things. So then when I have a background in my master's in instructional design and technology, so we do a lot of theoretical teaching and methodology teaching, and a lot of the things is how can I trigger your short-term memory to make it long-term? How could I give you certain snippets in my coaching trainings or whatever you want to call it, workouts, so then it's not the first time you've seen it.
Yep.
And that allows you to build that creativity that I like to give to players, right? It doesn't matter what system you're playing in. It could be the most traditional system versus the most, running up and down Grinnell style. You go one and is to take a first shot in the first 7 seconds of your shot clock. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's having a coach that can give you that aspect of things and expose you from an early age of the things that you need to do to get where you need to go is very important. Because now we think that I post a video on Instagram, right? And I'm showing, I don't know, counter moves for a spin move. And everyone thinks, or Stephen Curry or Casey Plum, whomever you want to name, they post a video making shots or making these nice moves or nice reads. That doesn't come from anything. It comes from a lot of trial and error, right? That's why I don't want to call it failure. It's a lot of practice, a lot of understanding, a lot of film work, a lot of, maybe not feeling it and then having to figure out how can I feel it. So I think that's what's missed in all of this process.
I like that. I think one of the cool story on that too, I used to train before we launched this company, trained a lot of kids in the Philadelphia area. And I remember it was a 5th grade girl. I taught her how to do a behind the back, left to right. She never knew how to do it. I showed up to one of her summer games and I saw her do it live, make the move and make the layup. And her dad turned around in the bleachers and looked at me and was like, "You guys were working on that yesterday. I saw it." So it's like kids just need to be exposed to if they're not going to get it all in one day. But if you show them in practice, the next thing you know, they could pick it up in a game because it's somewhere in their brain now and they know how to use it. But it's not a perfect system, but it is cool to see with young athletes pick that up.
I think that's very important. What you just said is key. And I saw this from Carl Lawson, the head coach at Duke, and now the head coach for the USA women's basketball team. And I had the chance to watch them at the World Cup qualifiers here in Puerto Rico. That was a couple weeks ago. And she said something that stuck with me, and I share this with my players all the time. There is an incubation period, just like a bird or like a chicken, whatever you want to call it, or like a baby. You're not born knowing how to walk. It takes time. It takes crawling. It takes, getting up and falling down. Sometimes we become impatient with our own process because we compare ourselves with somebody else.
Yep.
And when things get tough, we don't know how to handle it, right? And that's all beauty and all pretty and all, oh my God, this sounds so good. But it all goes back to saying there is time that needs to take place in order for you to get to where you need to go.
Yep.
There's a lot of trial and error that it takes for you to get to where you need to go. So maybe you were teaching that player, hey, behind the back, and before you know how to apply it, you got to know the technique on how to do it, right?
Yep.
That's the player 1.0 that I always call. I'm teaching you the technique so you know how to do it. You know how to feel the ball in your hands. Your palm is open on the ball. Your positioning on your hips is the right one. Your feet are connected to the ground. All these things, right? And I could go much more intricacy into it, but I'm not going to because purpose of the time, right? The 2.0 is now I'm reading the defense.
Yep.
Right? Now I know when to apply this move. And the 3.0 player is now I'm going to get you to do what I want you to do because I want to do what I want to do to protect the ball. In this case, maybe it's with a behind the back. So I think I always talk about these 3-level players because we want to jump into the third one and you don't even know.
Yep. Just
like for, mathematics, you cannot multiply if you don't know how to summarize things. It's the same way. And sometimes we want to jump on from 0 to 100 and we forget that there's a lot of numbers in between. And sometimes it's not linear, right? So
I think it's kids, and you mentioned it too. You brought up some of the names, but not to sound like a boomer, I'm actually the exact same age as you. I'm 32, but we didn't grow up in the age, and Facebook and even MySpace. I don't know if they had that in Spain, but it was like you had some social platforms. They were funny.
yes,
You
yes.
didn't have access to addicting content all the time when we were growing up. Like you would check out your friends on Facebook. That's about it. Now, young athletes will see every Steph Curry warm up shot. They'll see every three he makes, but nobody, and I mean, I'm sure there's some accounts, but they don't show up in your algorithm. Nobody shows the 900 shots that he misses in practice. Nobody shows him dribbling the ball off his foot in warm ups when he's trying to make a move. Like that stuff does happen, even especially for the college players in the high school. Don't get me wrong, it started, but it's like young athletes don't see that. So they want to jump to making every shot. It's not possible. But without, and that's fine, like the young kids, but like without a good coach or a mentor to explain, I always used to say in my drills with kids, I expect you, and I kind of like what you use. I used to say fail. I like trial and error. I expect you to mess up. I expect you to lose the ball. I expect you to go chase the ball down the court. Because if I'm not doing that, you're not working hard enough. Then you're not going to be pushing yourself in the game. But the kids don't grasp that. It's like they want to be successful all the time. And then you have a fourth grader who's like crying at the end of a session because they couldn't make three shots in a row. It's like, that's hard. Like, you're not supposed to do it. And get used to like not succeeding all the time, you know?
And I'm glad you bring up that word, expectations. And these players have wrong expectations, and they have expectations when they're working out. I don't work out for a goal, right? I don't work out for let me rephrase that. Let's say in my case, for example, I was, I took, this is my college career. I wanted to be the best shooter and the best point guard ever, right? So in order for me to do that, right, I had to do certain things in my workouts, correct? So let's say, for example, in my case, I made 1,500 threes every week, off the catch, off the dribble, all kinds of threes, right? I made 1,500 pull-ups every week in many ways, not just typical, just different situations, right? And then I made 1,000 free throws a week because I knew I was going to be the hardest worker in there. But my expectation was not to make every shot in the game.
Yep.
And for that matter, my confidence will be broke if I don't make every shot.
Yep.
Because you work so hard on something doesn't mean that the end product is going to live up to your false expectations. Get rid of expectations. You work hard to be better prepared when the chance happens.
I love that.
You see what I'm saying? And I think sometimes we forget that. And I just had a conversation yesterday with one of our players, and I have them with them constantly. There's nothing wrong with social media. I love the fact that players can look at, even on my own, in my own platform. That's why I started doing it. There needs to be exposure for all kinds of athletes, right? The problem is that the false expectations that we create, it's just like in relationships or like with your friends. The old saying is like, I'm expecting you to say hi to me every morning. No, I'm going to say hi to you every morning without creating any expectations. So I'm not going to be sad if you don't say it to me.
Yep.
I'm doing it because I want to. Same thing with working out and same thing with preparing yourself. We need to do the things, not because we have the expectations that I'm going to make every shot, which to your point, it's completely wrong. Not even the best of the best of the best do it.
Yep.
So why will we have those wrong expectations? But because there's this big exposure to these videos or this content, and I'm glad that people are starting to talk about this more and giving me more exposure to these kind of conversations is
Yep.
I need to do the work. So when the opportunity comes, my confidence is at a point that make or miss, I'm going to be okay with it because I'm going to look at the selection I made. I'm going to feel, sometimes you feel your form great and the ball goes in and out. That doesn't mean that your form is wrong or the 1,500 shots I took that week to make them, it's going to be not validated. You know what I'm saying? It's going to make me have the confidence that if I miss every shot in a game and the coach gives me the ball on the last 5 seconds, I know I'm going to knock that down, regardless if I made all of them before or not. So I think that we have a misconstrued, and I'm glad you brought that word, expectations.
Yep.
We portray those ourselves, and that's why our confidence and our moods, our emotions get to a point that is high and low. And I love Ricky Rubio, and I think that if players young players, parents have not heard about him, he has a saying, never too high, never too low. You got to keep yourself in that kind of, middle realm. And that is very hard.
Yep.
And it's going to take a lot of trial and error, because even at my, obviously I'm not that old, not that young. I'm kind of experienced in many ways, but I still have a lot to learn. I still catch myself going in highs and lows. I still catch myself having the wrong expectations for my career. Or sometimes I compare myself to other coaches and I'm like, my journey is my journey. I'm doing the work. So when the time comes for me, when it's for me, I'm going to be very prepared.
Yep.
Even if I fail or I don't do things the best way I thought I could have, or maybe if I had doubts, that's not my expectation. My expectation is not to do everything right. My expectation for me is only and solely to do the work every day so I'm better prepared. So I think that's what we get confused many times. And we got to still continue teaching these players and parents and families and to our own selves to always go back to that. Expectations are the worst thing that the human being has done to anything, in my opinion. So
I mean, it's just hard though, and I get it for kids. But I guess on the training standpoint too, to have them be more prepared for games, mental aside, because mental is like a whole separate piece. But when you're truly trying to get better and just come to a season more prepared, or you have tryouts coming up, obviously, again, you share a lot of really good clips and content for like actual basketball training. What do you think are some of the biggest glaring holes in young players' games today? Like, what are they not working on that you would want to see as a college coach? Is it a tighter handle, or is it the saying that like if you can make if you can make a three, or if you're a good shooter, you can play on my team any day? Like, what would you say if you're an average or good high school player, you're not raw athleticism off the charts? Like, what would you want kids to focus on to try to make it to the next step?
Decision making, understanding the game of basketball. I think many times we work on technique, but we don't work on how we react in a game. A lot of I call it decision making because it's kind of like the term that everyone hears about, or IQ. I'm sure you've heard and parents heard IQ a lot for us coaches. But players react all the time in the game. And to be a base player, you have to understand the game of basketball. And that comes with, that's why there's this offense principle, right? Read and react. It's the kind of common terms that, everybody uses, right? So I think that's what's lacking, the understanding of the game. If I'm working with a player, let's say we want to limit contact. A lot of happens to us in college where we play 2 games in the same week and we have limited contact, right? Or maybe, I'm training with somebody that I'm focusing on technique, but I want to add on snippets of reacting, decision making. I think there's a lack of that in all the things I've seen all across social media and all across many platforms. I think there's been more talks about it, but I think implementing that piece is very important because it's not only, the technique on how to dribble the ball or how we shoot or things like that. It's the actual understanding of the game and how you can bring that at least a certain level, so you have to spend less time on it, even though you still have to spend a lot of time in it. And even us, the higher level you go, the more you have to study the game, obviously, in many ways. But I think that's a big thing. And something very important is shooting the basketball. And let me go a little further, making shots. I think that in college or pro, obviously the game is changing a lot. And I'm not saying if you're a 6'3", 6'5" center that is extremely well back to the basket, maybe you can survive a little bit with that. But I think that, when you come with a good shooting base, it's going to be better for you. I'm not saying that that's the solo thing, but I think that that's a very important thing that we're looking at within players, because to be quite honest with you, if we see a player that has lacking outside shooting, and maybe, I'm talking about below 26% from the 3-point line, we're going to dare you to shoot. You're going to have to prove yourself. And that's going to help us to kind of bow down the defense and pack the defense a little bit more and help in other areas that we may need more help. So I think those two things are extremely important when it comes to the development of the players.
Shooting makes a ton of sense. That was me coming into high school. I remember I knew I wasn't going to, I'm wound up being like 6'3", 6'4". Never going to be incredibly tall, never going to have the best handle, but if you can just make shots, there's always somewhere for you on the team. But I do want to drill into the other one, because I think a lot of parents would agree they want their kid to have strong IQ. No, like a mom and dad, it makes sense. You want your kid to be kind of like a floor general, like it sounds like you were. How do you train that though? So I know it's the mental side. Like, is it just consistent? I would have ideas as a coach. I know you do, but for like moms and dads or maybe new coaches who just, again, not that anybody could, but you can look up YouTube videos for shooting form and for dribbling. If you Google YouTube videos for how to develop IQ, I'm sure there's going to be a very small amount, if any. But as there's a way to do it. How would you recommend the young athletes develop their IQ?
It's constraint-led training. So you limit dribbles, right? When you're doing certain things, you use voice for reaction. You use numbers, signals. You use colors. You use, I'm not sure. You could be so creative with it because it's reacting to things. It's like, let's say you're working on a between the legs move, right? And counter moves. It's adding the extra piece of not me just telling you as a coach, hey, I'm going to put 3 cones and you're going to do between the legs, behind the back, and spin move. And then you finish at the rim, right? It's, adding that creativity piece. Is the creativity and the player thinking from their own selves, not me always having to tell you what to do. Yeah. So like, for example, I don't know, let me just give you a quick example. Let's say yesterday we were working on give and go action with the team, right? And we didn't want to add defense. You could always add this with a player, when you're having what we call dummy defense, right? And you make the player have to react to what the player does. That's the easiest way, right? But let's say, for example, you're working more on the technique and the reaction and seeing how the player is kind of doing it, right? So you can add, for example, I had a orange cone and a yellow cone on my hands. And I told the players, okay, after you catch the ball on a give and go, which is a handoff, and I gave them 2 parameters of how to catch the ball when the defense either was trailing or shooting the gap. After you attack or not, I'm going to show you a cone, right? And I'm moving across the court, around the court, right? So I'm teaching them now how to look with their peripherals and not just look at one place, which I think that's a big constraint that players have, even in college, right? Yeah. So then I told them, hey, if I show the yellow cone, you're going to a pull-up, whatever pull-up you want. If I'm showing you the orange cone, you're getting to the rim. And you're imagining your defense. Imagine in how the defense is with you, right? I didn't tell them what we were working on, really. So let me show you the caveat to this. So many players were only looking at me after they caught the ball from the handoff, right? There was other players that were looking at me constantly, right? And there was players that never looked at me. So you already found 3 different areas that you can work on, right? So you're not looking at a cone in a game. I understand that, but you're looking at what's happening constantly within the 4 other teammates and 5 defense players, right? Yours included in that. So if I'm always looking, not necessarily moving my head, but I'm already seeing what's happening. I know what my next move is going to be. I'm not making the decision afterwards, right? So that's what I'm trying to install in the players. And the next caveat is, so let's say I showed the cone with delay time. Let's say the player already cut the cone and I show them the yellow, and after they cut the ball, I show them the red one. Now I'm making them have to react to different stimuli. In this case, we're attacking the secondary defender, right, of the handoff. But if I show them the cone early, we're attacking the primary defender. But I'm teaching them that without telling them that. So then after the workout, the drill, I told them, in the midst of it, I asking questions to the players. Hey, so what do you think we're mimicking here when I show you the cone early? Who you're attacking? Primary or secondary? Now, if I delay the cone and I show you the cone and you had to stop for a second, what do you work on? You worked on pausing. And they're like, oh my God, now we're attacking a secondary defender, and now I'm making you pause, and I'm making, maybe the roller or the popper, we're giving them time to do certain things. So you can teach concepts without telling them exactly what they're doing, and with questions, you're teaching them that IQ concepts that they're gonna attribute to when you're now playing for a system. So you see what I'm saying? Many times we tell players always what we want them to do, and I think it's the opposite. If we're teaching decision making, you have no clue what's gonna happen. Or reacting, which the 3.0 player decides what to do first. Now, let's say I want to take a 3, but you don't buy my jab step, right? Now I have to react to what you do. You stayed on your feet and you're in good position. Now I have to react and do something different. It has to be fast. So you see how you can train all of those things. And I'm giving a lot of my, I've never actually gave these snippets to anybody before, because in my platform, I don't show any of this, which hopefully in the future I can start doing that, because I think knowledge is power if it's shared. And I don't think I'm telling you anything that maybe other coaches are already doing, or something else that I haven't taken from somebody that I really liked and I made it my own. So I'm not giving you anything that you probably don't know or many others don't know. It's just my way, you know what I'm saying? So I think that many times we tell players all the time, and we train this, they're looking back to the coach all the time. Did I do right? What am I doing now? Don't look at me. If I show you 2 cones, and I did this sometimes, right, without telling them, I show 2 cones. Some players were like, you're showing me 2 colors at the same time. What do I do? And then you heard other teammates of her saying to her, choose. You do what you want to do. So you see how you're installing that creativity that players are taken away because they're constantly told what to do.
I like that.
And that's how you can work on it. You see what I'm saying? So
I really like that.
Yeah. So that's just a couple things that I do. Hopefully somebody can take on to make their own and utilize them.
Because being a shooter, a lot of my drills were succession, consecutive based. That's what I taught a lot too. But more of the game IQ. That's definitely a point guard mentality. Having to have those.
But you can add it to But you can add it to anybody.
Oh, for sure.
I agree 100% into you working on repetition. I love that. You have to do it, and you have to build stamina.
Yep.
Because for me to go to that 0.0, 2.0, and 3.0, you have to have that base.
Yep.
But now, if a player, I always say this, if after a workout, I haven't taught you anything, even if it's at 1%, and you're not outside of my workout saying, oh, I learned that even if it's a slight thing, we're wrong. If I'm not giving you, something that challenges you every time, which it has to be beyond you making, you can make, like if we're working on repetition and you're working as a shooter and you're working on like, obviously, what I call pressure shooting, right? Like if I'm doing drills, which I do sometimes, I like to utilize both. Let's say we do a series of like stagger shooting, right? And you have to make 10 for 12, right? We're striving for that because you're a great shooter and we want to work on pressure shooting. If you miss 2 in a row, it's -1, right? I love that. I'm sure you've done that before.
Yep.
I'm sure, right? But now let's work on when you're coming off a stagger. If I show you yellow, the defense is being caught behind and they're capping it, so you shoot right behind it. And if I show you, orange, then you're fading because the defense is trying to shoot the gap over the top, and then you read the fade. You know what I'm saying? Like there's many ways you can train those decision-making skills within, and then if you're so good, then we add on the pressure shooting.
Love that.
Right?
Love
so
that.
if you have to make the right react or make the right read, and now you're adding pressure shooting. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you can do all kinds of things, and I always say this. I always go back to this is why I love that I played basketball. Why would have I liked for myself? Would I enjoy this? Would that teach me something? Right? Would I find myself having to think and understand the game beyond me just repeating. When you get to that level, like some players, you still have to work on your technique, you still have to work on your elbow, your feet, all this stuff. I'm not saying that you start from that, but you can always add on these things from early age, even if you're working on those. You see what I'm saying? So, but
I like that.
to your point, just to, so I don't get kind of like, because I know I go through the weaves, constraint-led training, limiting dribbles, adding time, using your voice, using stimuli, any things that you could think of, all those things are teaching that reaction, decision-making type of training.
I like that. We do that a lot for team practices, like end of game, and I'm sure every high school, college team goes through it, but end of game situations. But I like bringing that to the one-on-one level. I don't think a lot of coaches are doing that. A lot of one-on-one skill trainers are, like you said, repetition pounding, but if you can add the creativity, it gives a big boost. If you got time, go for it.
You could do it with groups too.
True.
Like when I do group trainings, another thing that kids struggle nowadays a lot, which I've seen, is focus.
Mm-hmm.
So they only can focus at the first task at hand. So for example, adding, after you make a pass, like if you're the next player with a ball, now you have to do something else, and then you have to start the drill. So like adding all of those concepts, you could do it in group settings, and you would find a lot of things within that team, and ask always for feedback. I always ask my players, what are your thoughts? Did this help you? Did you enjoy this? Did you have fun? But it was also hard.
I like that.
It's very important. And obviously watching your workouts again, and sometimes I'm like, maybe I didn't explain this the right way. Maybe I should have used this verbiage. Maybe I should have used a metaphor here. So it's like, it's a constant trial and error. It always goes back to that. It's for everybody.
Yeah, It's never perfect. I got two more good questions if you don't mind.
Okay.
So I think I knew it before we hopped on, but everything you're saying, one, I would have loved to have played with you because I'm a shooting guard. So as a point guard.
Oh, I'll get you the ball.
Seemed like you would run a tight ship, but I like that. But from a coaching standpoint, you obviously know your stuff too. So for parents and athletes who are looking for a good coach, and that could be any type of coach. It could be a private coach. It could be your next high school coach. Picking high schools is big in the U.S. Or it could be your college coach, which is a major decision. What would you recommend they look for in coaches to help the parents get the best out of their kid when they essentially give their kids to this coach for 4 years if it's high school or college?
It's asking all these questions. You got to ask questions. It's just as business for us, as coaches, as it is for them. So you got to know your non-negotiables. So like if you ask me, whenever I had kids, for me, the non-negotiables is, I'm not sure, like when we're talking about college, there's obviously other things that involve your decision making to go to college. But if we're strictly talking about basketball, is, what is your system like? Can I watch your practice? Watching their games, seeing if what they're saying, translates to what you're actually seeing. How much turnover ratio are in the players that are on the teams? How long has the coach have been there? What obviously, if you want to go to a winning program, you gotta see the success throughout the years, but it's the how, right? Like, how do you train? Do you guys have individual development? Do you guys do film sessions? What kind of not necessarily just equipment, but what kind of tools do you use? Because we have, for example, we have a NOAA machine here that for shooting, that is a software that it's included in every basket for the players to understand their arc. We didn't have that when I was growing up, which I would have loved to have that. You don't need that to become better, but it's another tool that we invest for your development. So all of those things, and always look at cues or clues when people are talking to you. You can tell when someone really if your goal is to get better at basketball, ask questions around that. If your goal is to win, ask questions about that. You have to know and have a plan for your visits, or when you're going to high school, AU, whatever. What are your non-negotiables? For me, are learning basketball and playing in a system that allows me to be me. That's what I wanted when I came to college. And when I played it back in Estudiantes back home, and I played in a system and in a club that allowed me to do those things. So I guess that's my biggest concern or advice is some people don't really have their non-negotiables in place, and you have to have those. Maybe it's location, maybe it's education, maybe is having not necessarily your vibe with the head coach but the assistant coaches, or vice versa. Maybe you really like the head coach. Do you want to play for a system or the other? Is based upon what you like. That's a very specific question to each person, because maybe what I look for is different for what you look for. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, and vice versa. So non-negotiables is very important. What are your top three non-negotiables? Because all of the other things are nice to haves that I say. There's must-haves and nice to haves.
Yeah.
So that's what I would suggest for
perfect.
everybody. Yeah.
I think for that too, that goes across every type of coach, because you could even like location, if it's private coach, could be price point, could be experience, could be availability. For high school coaches, it should be education's a big part of it, but also like you and the teammates in the school. So I think, but if the parents and the kids sit down and figure that out, then there's no confusion. But if you go in with a
Exactly.
blank slate, it's easy to get sold in maybe the wrong direction, which you probably might not have wanted to. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Maybe the last question, Elena. So I love asking this one at the end, and I feel like I'm kind of excited to hear your answer. So if you could, having done all you've done, played at a high level, coached at a high level, basketball is your life at this point, and you're crushing it. But if you could go back to early days, Elena, just starting out in basketball studiante and kind of being like a whatever age you kicked it off at, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, what advice would you give to your younger self, having learned everything you've gone through over the last 20 or so years?
Don't compare yourself with others. That I did that a lot, and I'm a very perfectionist person in every aspect in my life, and I'm also a very hard worker, and I'm like a type of person that if I like something, I'm gonna go for it no matter what anybody tells me. But I think that in many ways I struggled with comparing my journeys with others and being impatient at times. Same thing I'm trying to tell you at the beginning, same thing I did. And I wish I would have told this to myself, because it doesn't matter, how tall you are. It doesn't matter how fast you are in basketball. It's a matter of what can you provide to the team, right, in that specific moment, and not allow the pressure of the outside voices coming to you. Because I was an early bloomer, and I kind of got into, back in when we were younger, right? There was no social media, but there was, fan clubs or fan websites where they talked about you and things like that. And I made a mistake of looking at those and sometimes believing what others believed about me,
Yep.
versus me knowing who I was. And I was very young, so it's very tough when you're young because you're still kind of figuring out life as it is. So I think that sometimes I fell into holes where I believed other people before myself. I listened to other people before myself, and I compared myself a lot because others were comparing me to others.
Yep.
You're you. You are your journey. You don't need to be like anybody else. I'm Elena De Alfredo. You're Jean. No one is you. So don't try to be somebody else that you're not. That doesn't mean that you can take on from others. And I think that's growth. And
Yeah.
I love the growth of, being able to get from others and how global we are right now, that we can have this conversation right now and expose certain things that maybe I was not exposed to when I was a younger kid. But sometimes I think I made the mistake of trying to go too fast and allow that pressure to get to me to a point that, it would make me doubt myself. And I didn't understand that doubting yourself is not the problem, is when you do what you do when you're doubting.
Yeah.
Staying in that doubt instead of seeing it as, okay, maybe there's things that I could work on, while I'm building that confidence that I'm looking for at an early age.
I like that.
So I think that's the advice that I would have given me, and to always, always, always trust your gut. Always. Obviously, when you're growing and you're growing up and you're maturing, you learn how to defer from certain things and paying attention to others. But I think that I would have told myself that as well.
I love that. And I feel like we came up in an age where there wasn't really advice or feedback on this because our parents and even older siblings probably didn't even have those fan
Yeah.
clubs, blog articles. It was so new. So, of course, you're going to read it about yourself. But then when you realize at one point you were ranked making up numbers, like the number 5
Yeah.
player in Spain, and then the next year you dropped to 10, and it's like, am I bad? Am I a bad player? But
Exactly.
nowadays there's advice and feedback from awesome people like you who are telling young athletes doesn't really matter. To forget about, don't even look at those pages because it's all opinion. But no one
And
did
it's
it
not
first.
linear. Nothing is linear. And I thought it was linear. I thought that it was always like that. And I wish I would have told myself that it's a roller coaster. It's a matter of trying to get it as even as we can as we go along while we're learning. So I wish I would have told that to myself more often.
Well, honestly, with you telling it here, we're going to be able to get it in front of hopefully thousands, tens of thousands of parents and athletes that watch this. So honestly, I can't thank you enough, Elena, for making the time. I know you're crazy busy on campus, but this one was so much fun. I've got so many good tidbits already that I can think of that we're going to share. So appreciate you doing
Absolutely.
this. It was a blast.
Thank you guys. And again, I'm always here to connect, and hopefully we can give voice to certain things that I think they need more light in our world, right? So thank you
100%.
again. Absolutely.
We need more good coaches like you. So thanks, Elena.
Appreciate that. I still have a lot to learn though, and that's okay. And I will give this. Maybe this is something else. I always tell this to my players to myself. If you think you know it all, you're already mediocre. So I don't know it all, and that's my beauty, and that's my forte, and that's my strength. That I'm always looking to get better. So hopefully we can get better, continue to get better. So
100%.
Yeah.
But thank you, Elena. It was awesome.
absolutely, thank you.
Bye.